This session is now recorded. So there's a screen that I'd like to share. Can the both of you see this? Or Nathan, as you are resting right now because you're experiencing asthma problems, feel free to listen to the discussion. So here's our lesson. We are now going to do the lesson on planning, which is really, really significant in the context of organization and management. We start by knowing the key concepts and definitions involved in planning. As defined, it is a process that involves the setting of the organization's goals, establishing strategies for accomplishing those goals, and developing plans of actions that managers intend to use to achieve the same organizational goals. And it is important because it provides direction to all of the organization's human resource managers and employees. It reduces uncertainty and minimizes waste of time, effort, and resources. Like what all planning activities can do, at least time, effort, and resources will not be wasted. There are what we also call as planning goals. These are the targets that management desires to reach, while plans are the means or actions which management intends to use to achieve the said goals or targets. There are areas by which plans are best described of. We describe them in terms of their comprehensiveness, how they are really understandable, how they come out to be understandable to the people who are going to read them or to the intended audience of the plan. We do not want participants or members of the organization to raise several confusions among themselves on how the plan is supposed to be carried out. Because if that's the case, there might be an issue of comprehensiveness as to how that plan has been crafted. Time frame in terms of how long it will take to accomplish the plan. Specificity on what it really wishes to address. And lastly, in terms of the frequency of use. Depending on the nature of the plan, you might make a plan that's good for a particular circumstance only, or you might make a plan that can be repeated because situations can also recur. What is the purpose of a plan? It provides direction. Like what all plans can do, it guides you on where you are going. It guides you, it places you on the right path, especially that your organization has set some goals to achieve at the end of a particular period. It reduces uncertainties. Organizations, businesses always welcome uncertainties, but planning helps reduce these uncertainties. It minimizes waste and redundancy. There's no need for unnecessary expenditures. There's no need to have any waste. There is a possibility of minimizing wastage once a plan has been made. And of course, you have set standards for control. Steps. First, you define the goals or objectives, determining where you stand in relation to your set goals or objectives. You develop premise regarding future conditions, like what do you want to achieve or see in the future. Then from there, you try to identify action alternatives. You analyze and choose action alternatives. You implement the plan, but it will not end there. The plan will have to be evaluated in terms of its results. And from there, you take corrective actions. Though a plan has been made, organizations and businesses, managers of these groups must expect that things might still turn out differently, that you cannot be too ready. Therefore, the evaluation will tell these managers that they can do corrective actions, that there are rectifications that need to be done for the plan. Types of plan. We have a strategic plan. A strategic plan is long-term. It's a long-term plan, and in fact, it runs for like 3 to 5 years. And the top management is involved in framing the strategic plan. You also have a tactical plan. The strategic plan is the broader type of plan to specify the strategic plan to to carry it out, we have tactical plans. These are shorter time frame plans and are focused for like 1 or 2 years. They are concerned with the implementation of strategic plans by coordinating the work of different departments in the organization. And operational plans can still be made to translate tactical plans into specific goals. So see now the flow. Strategic plans can be translated into tactical plans. Tactical plans can be translated into operational plans. Operational plans can run for months, like in 12 months or less, as these are really specific and targeted to small units of the organization. You also have long-term plans. Long-term plans are synonymous to strategic plans. They are usually encompassing of all functional areas of the business and are affected within the existing and long-term framework of economic, social, and technological factors. If you have a long-term plan, then of course you have a short-term plan, which is usually made for 1 year. Usually, that's the duration of a short-term plan. They are directly affecting functional groups such as production, marketing, and finance. You also have directional plans. These are flexible plans that set out general guidelines, provide focus, yet allow discretion in implementation. You have specific plans, clearly identifying and leaving no room for interpretation as objectives have already been clearly and specifically defined. You also have single-use plans. These are plans formulated for a particular time at a specific time only, and then once situations come in the future, they are to be another single-use plan will be formulated. So a single-use plan is again just for that particular period or instance. Examples of this are budgets, projected budgets, targets, and so on. And of course, in contrast to single-use plans are standing plans. These are plans that can be used again and again over a long period of time, like the mission and long-term objectives of the organization, strategies, policies, procedures, and rules. So you have these different planning types: strategic, tactical, operational, long-term, short-term, directional, specific, single-use, and standing plans. Planning also happens at different levels. At the corporate level, it focuses on what industries should we get into, in which business should a corporation invest money, what markets should the firm be in, what resources should be allocated to each business. On the business level, which is focused on how to compete effectively in the market, planning is of who are our direct competitors. Planning involves knowing who the direct competitors are. It also knows, it also tries to know the strengths and weaknesses of direct competitors. And of course, the strengths and weaknesses of one's organization will have to be also identified and examined. And lastly, what advantages do we have over our competitors? And the last level is the functional level, like what activities does my unit need to perform well in order to meet customer expectations? And what information about competitors does my unit need in order to help the business compete effectively? The functional level is focused on how they can facilitate the achievement of the competitive plan of the business. So that's the arrangement, that's the flow. The corporate level tries to identify first the nature of the business. Planning is done to know what the business is for, like why the business is being created, who are the expected market members of that business. After having answered this, we proceed to the business level to determine now who would serve as competitors of the organization, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what one's own strengths and weaknesses are, and then to also know what the business's advantage is or advantages are over competitors. And lastly, for the functional level, it has something to do with how these competitive plan will be put into action. Planning techniques. There are techniques to do planning. You can do forecasting, which is an attempt to predict what might happen in the future. It tries to project to oneself how things could turn out in the future. Another planning technique is the use of a contingency plan, a plan B, in case things turn out to be unexpected. When things go wrong, at least a backup plan is ready. A contingency plan, of course, per definition, is a backup plan. Contingency plans provide alternative courses of actions, and planning should, of course, be directed to that. So earlier I said, no matter how planned how planned the person organization may be, things might still turn out differently. Things not expected might still happen. So it pays so much to have a contingency plan. You also have scenario planning, which is a long-term version of a contingency plan. It really plans ahead and makes necessary adjustments in terms of strategies and operations of the business. Benchmarking is another planning technique. Benchmarking involves comparisons of one's practices and technologies with those of other companies. Benchmarking can come in two types. You can benchmark externally, you can benchmark internally. External benchmarking works for one. External benchmarking works by trying to know what practices other organizations are doing to improve their performance. Internal benchmarking looks into the different units in a particular organization, and then knowing what one unit does that makes it so effective and efficient, and introducing these practices to other units. So benchmarking, internal benchmarking happens within the organization itself. External benchmarking involves another company, and the comparison happens between one's own company and another company. The last technique is participatory planning, which includes the people who will be affected by the plans and those who will be asked to implement them in all planning steps. So participatory planning requires the involvement of people, the ones who will make the plan and the ones who will be affected by the plan. So that, of course, as the ones affected by the plan, they could right away give value judgment whether the plan might work to them or not. The plan can right away be given an initial judgment of how good it sounds like to the people who will be affected once the plan is implemented. So that's why participatory planning is also introduced. There are several, even schools do participatory planning because of course they have to, the higher management has to consider that the ones who are constituents, they are considered as their constituents, will be affected by the plan, and that they should know beforehand what's the content of the plan. In the sorry, in the context of doing planning or making a plan, decision making is a parallel concept. Decision making can be rational, where the making of a choice is logical and consistent, and value is maximized. Assumptions of here are assumptions of rationality. A rational decision maker would be fully objective and logical. He will have a clear and specific goal and know all the possible alternatives and consequences. In fact, making decisions rationally would consistently lead to selecting the alternative that maximizes the likelihood of achieving that goal. In here, decisions are made in the best interest of the organization. But of course, one's decision making may not be rational all the time. It may even be a bounded rationality form of decision making, which is more realistic. Here, managers make decisions rationally but are bounded by their ability to process information. Since they can't possibly analyze all information and all alternatives, managers satisfies rather than maximize. The word satisfies in that line means they simply accept solutions that are good enough on a realistic approach, Bounded rationality believes that the goals cannot really be maximized. Reaching the value cannot be reached in its utmost potential. But of course, they can still be reached, just not at their full potential. Bounded rationality is directed at being able to reach what can be reached, what's practically and realistically reachable. They are being rational within their limits of their ability to process information. That's why it's bounded. Rationality is still there, but limited to the ability to process information. That whatever is reached at the moment is considered to be what's achieved. It's considered to be the accomplishment. Lastly, decision making can also be intuition based. Making decisions on the basis of experience, feelings, and judgment. It can be cognitive based, experience based, value or ethics based, or subconscious mental processing. You can do two types of decision making. You can do linear thinking, which uses external data and processes information through rational, logical thinking to guide decisions and actions. Or you can do non-linear thinking, which uses internal sources of information, such as feelings and intuitions, and processes information with internal insights, hunches, and feelings to guide actions and decisions. That's making it non-linear. And when making decisions, errors and biases can be made. For instance, there's an error on immediate gratification. Immediate gratification is wanting immediate rewards but avoiding immediate costs, where the decision maker relies on quick payoffs that are more appealing than those that may provide payoffs in the future. Another error is the anchoring effect, where decision makers fixate on initial information as a starting point and once then set, fail to adequately adjust for subsequent information. That once one information is already known, they fail to acknowledge the presence of other information. That is why their decisions are faulty or wrong. You have a selective perception bias. This happens when decision makers selectively organize and interpret events based on their biased perception. They pay attention to the problems they identify and the alternatives they develop. So they are too limited to what they just perceive. They are not open in this error. Decision makers are not open anymore to what is yet to happen. Confirmation bias is another error where decision makers seek out information that reaffirms their past choices. They discount information that contradict their past judgment. You also have an availability bias where decision makers tend to remember events that are the most recent and vivid in their memory. This might distort judgment and probability estimates. Representation bias. This is where decision makers assess the likelihood of an event based on how closely it resembles other events. In here, the decision maker makes one event stand for the other. Managers see identical situation when they don't exist. Because of similarities, managers then feel like situations may come out to be true. Situation A will be represented by situation B, but cases might not actually be true all the time. Randomness. It occurs when decision makers try to create meaning out of random events. The sunk cost error is another error. This is where the decision maker forgets that current choices cannot correct the past. They incorrectly fixate on past expenditures of time, money, or effort in assessing their choices. You have the self-serving bias, where decision makers who are quick to take credit for the success, where we have decision makers who are quick to take credit for the success, but are to blame failure on outside factors that exhibit this bias. Lastly, you have the hindsight bias. They falsely believe, decision makers falsely believe after that outcome is actually known that they could have accurately predicted the outcome of the event. Steps in decision making. It begins with, of course, the identification of the problem. It's normal that the problem will have to be known. I mean, that's the first thing. After having known the problem, you identify the decision criteria. Then you allocate weights to the criteria. Then you try to identify alternatives. You develop alternatives. You analyze alternatives afterwards. You determine which alternative works best. You determine which alternative works satisfactorily, or which alternative is a poor alternative. Then you select an alternative, you implement alternative chosen, and then you evaluate the effective decision effectiveness to see whether that decision was effective or not. And there are three conditions in decision making. You have first certainty, where one really knows the outcome of every alternative. There's also a chance for risk, a situation in which the decision maker is able to estimate the likelihood of certain outcomes. Risk recognizes outcomes of events, outcomes of alternatives. It's just that there is nothing sure of what alternative really comes out. That's why the risk is there. In certainty, there is already a known alternatives outcome. An outcome is already identified from a particular alternative. Risk just recognizes the presence of many outcomes. It's just not sure of which one comes out. Whereas for uncertainty, a situation has neither certainty nor reasonable probability estimates available. So nothing can really be known for uncertainty. It's neither certain nor risky. That is why for these kinds of decision, for this kind of condition, decision making will have to be well thought of, well examined. So that's the last part. Questions, Nicole and Nathan? Nathan, Nicole, do we have some questions?
Wala po, sir.